Oh, hi, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'm presenting a research internship report for approximate dividers implementing FPGA. My name is Zishan Zhang, and my supervisor is Arnold Kredish. So the presentation will be partitioned into 5 parts. The first is some brief introduction, and the second part we're going to talk about some related works and how we pick up this specific type of approximate divider for the implementation. And after that, we're going to do a short introduction of how it is, how the principle, how this approximate divider is working. And then we're going to present how this is implemented in the actual FPGA, its hardware architecture, and further any optimization we have done. And finally, we're going to present the synthesis result, how many resources, lookup tables we're using, what is the frequency we achieved, and what's the error we have we're able to achieve. So the first one would be why do we need a approximate divider? Because in some applications, the exact result of the computation is not always needed. For example, in image processing applications, the human eyes are kind of insensible to tiny pixel changes. For example, here is a brief, like an example of the famous Lina picture. If we add a little bit of noise, like a variation of pixel values, you actually cannot detect any error, any differences just with your eyes. And the second part is the second reason for this approximate divider is that the division is actually considered as an expensive operations. Some old ARM CPUs instruction set that they actually don't have these dividing instructions because this hardware implementation of a division requires like it's giving you a very large area penalty. That's why they are imitating this division through the software, just softwares like by the add and these multiplications instructions. And throughout the literary research, normally you will find 3 types of designs for the approximate dividers. The first one is rounding the divisor to the power of 2, because as we know in hardware, if if you divide something by 2, that corresponds to a shift operation, which is fairly easy to implement. It is considered as a very cheap, not expensive, very convenient operations. So by rounding the divisor to the power of 2, we can actually convert the division into a series of shiftings. That's the point. That's the working principle of this first type of approximate divider. And the second one is turning the division problem into a multiplicative division, which is like turning this A divided by B. You get turns it into the A multiply the reciprocal of B of the divisor. Then you play a little game of like expanding, like using Taylor series to expand the reciprocal using like the more like in hardware, it's gonna through a couple several iterative cycles. The more cycles you run, you will get a more accurate representation of the reciprocal. That's how usually these these types of approximate dividers control their error. And the third one would be use just the third one basically is just using a smaller exact divider. Here's a brief introduction example. So this is actually this is a 12-bit with the first 8-bit as integer, and you will see the actual division is like this. And for like and as an extreme example of it, we can just abandon the other bits, just keep the most significant bits. So this has been shortened to just 11 divided by 10. This is obviously an extreme demonstration of how this works. Well, the disadvantage of these approximate dividers are it's iterative. The first one is iterative. For example, the Taylor series based approximation we have mentioned. And the second one is it's kind of once you have set the configuration parameters, it's kind of like a black box, and it's very hard to predict how much actually error you are going to get, because in approximate like for an application that uses this approximate dividers, there might be other components like approximate multiplier that they work together. So you gotta have a very clear matrix, very clear like how much error we're gonna get maximum from this component. Then we can kind of get the big picture, kind of like a balancing between the different components, the multiplications, divisions. That's why we want the error to be like has a kind of predictable. So, but most of these approximate dividers are giving us an error in mean relative error, which is abbreviation MRE. It does not guarantee what's the maximum absolute error percentage we're getting. That's one problem. That's one feature that we definitely don't desire. Here's some relative works. Among them, we noticed that the curve fitting approach dividers stands out in these approximate dividers. Notice that for the area we have, for the area column, this one we have normalized the area to all to the 45 nanometer technologies. And from this screen, you could see this is the Taylor series expansion approximate divider we mentioned. It's suffering like a huge error penalty once we have pipeline it, and also the error is giving a mean relative error. And this blue box is actually indicating is giving us the result of the third type approximate divider we have mentioned. It is giving us a good area, but the error is kind of less. We're not satisfied about the error result. And here, what's labeled as red box in this table is the curve fitting approach based approximate divider. It's giving us a relatively good area and also guarantees a maximum absolute error percentage. This is something we really wish it could have. And the working principle of this approximate divider is fairly simple. First, we're gonna give a briefly review what's actually a floating point number. So it's composed of an exponent and mantissa. So the mantissa is actually representing the number between 0 and 1. It cannot be equal to 1. It's a scientific notations. It's kind of scientific notation that we learn in high school. So by representing dividend and divisor as such, we could get this quotient as a representation of this. And then the quotient is actually the quotient actually can be represented as like a function that characterized by the mantissa, both mantissa from of dividend and divisor, and then we can actually plot this as a curve, and according to the situation where this dividend or divisor is large or zero, the comparison of their magnitude, this can be simplified into two cases. So two curve, which is shown in the right diagram. And then this curve could be approximated once we have partitioned these curve into several regions, as shown in this case. And then we can use the polynomial. We can use the curve fitting approach to replace this curve surface using a polynomial. And then we have the error estimation, and it is actually independent of the exponent. This is the hardware architecture we're looking at. Notice that this curve fitting divider is actually based on floating points. So additional conversion conversion units are needed. Here is the shift to A and shift to B, and they have to find the first significant bit, and by shifting it so we could the remaining bits will be all mantissas, and we have an exponent module that's gonna track how much shift we have, and this comparison is gonna give us this carry, like we're indicating which situation we're looking at. Is the mantissa of the divider is bigger or is smaller than mantissa of divisor? And then through this big lookup table, which is a bunch of nested if statements in the implementation, then we found the coefficient of the PQR that in this polynomial. And then the final calculation is done in the arithmetic modules where it received the mantissa and the approximating coefficients, as well as like how much shifting we have done in the shifting modules, and we're gonna move it back. That's finally we're gonna give a fixed point representation of the coefficient. But before we do this low-level implementation in HDLs, a Python prototyping study done to collect the error information, how much bit width we're using, what kind of partition like scheme, like a different partition scheme is giving us different error, how much error we're expecting. So here we can see once partition fitting has reached the 6x6 region, a further increase of the partitions actually don't mean too much, doesn't help too much. And the bit width is at best could keep above 12 bits. Notice this is the case for 16-bit divider. While the actual experiment result can validate our prototyping from the Python. So here is the diagram of the actual errors they are collecting. It is like it matches what we have, the data we collected in the prototyping stage. And the consumption result is listed here, and all these arrows and the resource consumption levels, like lookup tables, are also here. Notice when there are still two improved points that, like, improvements we can use. One is a lot of those coefficient values are stored using lookup table, but these actually can be stored using the dedicated the block RAM that in FPGA. And the second thing is this is a whole, like, until now, this is a whole combination of circuit which we could pipeline it by adding these registers to further increase its frequencies, so we have higher throughput. So this is the design of the pipeline version of this approximate dividers. The biggest difference would be this block RAM that is used to store the coefficient values, and so the big lookup table that used to store these values is now giving the corresponding address to the block RAM, and the block RAM is giving us the PQR coefficient that we use to approximate. And here's the result for our consumptions. We can see that the usage of the lookup tables is significantly reduced. Almost half of the lookup table are no longer needed, and those actual informations are going into the RAM. Here is a list of the comparison to the pipeline exact dividers. We can see that it basically it's a relationship between 1 to 8 or 1 to 9. It gives us a significantly area reduction, and if we can comparing this. So this partition of 5 by 5 is actually already giving us an error that is below 1%, and its resource consumption is, if we compare to the non-storing exact dividers, it has achieved more than it achieves us like about 80% resource reduction, and the downside is that it's running at a bit lower frequency than the exact dividers. This is because the combination delay, the critical path in the big lookup module is too high, which is absolutely something that we could improve in the future. So in conclusion, an approximate divider that is chosen after literature review, and we get this and we have selected and after this comparison, we have selected this curve fitting based approximate divider. That is, then we follow the stages using we follow 4 stages. One is we prototype using high level language, and then we choosing the configuration parameter based on our prototype result. Then we go for the low level VHDL implementations and we collect the final, the actual error data from our simulations, and then compare with the result, the error the statistics that we obtain from the prototyping. And consumptions error frequencies are collected to compare with the exact dividers, and we have achieved significantly resource reductions in terms of the lookup tables, and at a running frequency of 150 megahertz. And yes, and these are the sources for these 3 types of approximate dividers, and the last one is for the resource consumption of the exact dividers. Thank you.